Everyone you know has a weight loss theory. Your aunt swears by keto. Your gym friend swears by intermittent fasting. Some guy on the internet swears that drinking warm water with lemon at 5 in the morning unlocks your metabolism. Your other friend says it's all about eating clean, whatever that actually means. They cannot all be right. So today, we're ignoring every single influencer opinion, and we're only looking at what the actual peer-reviewed research says. All of it. The hormones, the diets, the myths, and the medications nobody fully understands yet. Let's start with the sentence everyone's heard 1,000 times. Weight loss is just calories in versus calories out. Eat less than you burn, you lose weight. Simple. Mathematical. Done. Video over. See you next time. Except, it's not nearly that simple, and here's exactly why, piece by piece. First problem. The calorie numbers on your food labels are not nearly as accurate as you think they are. Studies analyzing packaged food have found it can contain anywhere from 13% less to a staggering 61% more energy than what's actually printed on the label. So when you're carefully, religiously counting 400 calories for your lunch, you might actually be eating closer to 650, and you would have absolutely no way of knowing it. You didn't fail at math. The label lied to you a little. Second problem. Calories burned is just as messy to track as calories eaten. Most people assume exercise is the big variable controlling how many calories they burn in a day. For most people, it actually isn't. The biggest hidden variable has a name researchers call NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Basically, the energy you burn just existing throughout your day. Fidgeting, walking around your house, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, standing instead of sitting, even just being a naturally restless person versus a naturally still one. NEAT alone can swing your daily calorie burn by up to 800 calories, purely based on how restless or how still your individual body happens to be, with zero conscious effort involved. Researchers have actually documented cases where, during deliberate overfeeding experiments, some people's bodies automatically cranked up their NEAT to burn off the extra calories almost completely, while other people's bodies barely adjusted at all and they gained significant weight. Same extra food. Wildly different outcomes. Same species, completely different internal thermostats. So two people can eat identical meals, do identical workouts, sleep the same number of hours, and still lose dramatically different amounts of weight, because their bodies are quietly burning wildly different amounts of energy in the background, without either of them lifting a single dumbbell or skipping a single bite. And now here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. The hormone side of this entire equation, which most popular diet advice completely ignores. When you lose a meaningful amount of weight, your body doesn't just calmly accept the new, smaller version of itself. It fights back. Hard. There's a concept in obesity research called set point theory, which suggests your body has something like a genetically influenced target weight that it actively works to defend, almost like a thermostat for body fat. Lose weight quickly, and your brain interprets that as a survival threat, not a personal achievement, and starts pulling biological levers to pull you right back toward where you started. Here's exactly how those levers work. There's a hormone called leptin, produced by your fat cells, that essentially tells your brain, we have enough energy stored, you can stop being hungry now. When you lose weight, your leptin levels drop, which makes complete sense, since you have less fat tissue producing it. But research published in the New England Journal of Medicine found something striking. Leptin levels drop disproportionately more than your actual fat loss would predict. Your brain receives a signal of energy scarcity that's exaggerated beyond what's actually happening in your body, and it responds by quietly cranking your hunger up and your energy expenditure down. At the same time, a different hormone called ghrelin, often nicknamed the hunger hormone, rises significantly. And here's the part that genuinely surprises people. In some long-term studies, elevated ghrelin levels have been shown to persist for months, and in some cases over a year after weight loss. Your stomach keeps quietly screaming, "Feed me," long after the actual diet has ended. On top of that, satiety hormones like peptide YY, cholecystokinin, and GLP-1, yes, the same GLP-1 those new weight loss medications target, all get suppressed after weight loss. Meaning the hormones that normally tell you, okay, you're full, stop eating, are quieter than they used to be, while the hormones screaming, you're starving, eat more are louder. It is, biologically speaking, a deeply unfair fight, stacked against the person trying to keep weight off. And brain imaging research adds one more disturbing layer. Functional MRI studies have shown that after significant weight loss, the brain's response to food cues actually shifts, increasing activity in reward and pleasure pathways when looking at food, rather than the calm, regulatory pathways that operated before the weight loss. In plain language, food doesn't just become something your body wants more after dieting. It becomes something your brain finds more emotionally rewarding to look at and think about. That's not weak willpower. That's measurable, photographable brain chemistry. This is exactly why more than half of people who lose significant weight regain most of it within a few years. And it has far less to do with discipline than the diet industry wants you to believe, and far more to do with a hormonal and neurological system actively working against the new, lower weight. Now, the genuinely encouraging part of this research. Set point theory isn't a life sentence. Newer research suggests your set point isn't permanently fixed. It can shift over time with sustained behavior change, more sleep, lower chronic stress, and gradual, rather than dramatic weight loss. The body fights hardest against fast, extreme weight loss. Slower, more sustainable weight loss appears to trigger a noticeably gentler version of this hormonal pushback. 1. Okay, let's talk about the actual diets everyone keeps arguing about online, now that we understand the hormonal battlefield they're all operating inside of. Intermittent fasting. In a real-world clinical trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, intermittent fasting produced an average weight loss of 4 kilograms over 12 months, slightly outperforming both the Paleolithic diet and the Mediterranean diet in that same head-to-head study. Not because fasting contains some magical metabolic switch. Mostly because restricting your eating window naturally restricts how much total food you consume, without requiring you to consciously count a single calorie. Ketogenic diets. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that a very low-calorie ketogenic diet led to a 7% reduction in body weight in just one single month in women with obesity. That is a genuinely dramatic, fast result. But here's the detail almost nobody explains properly. Most of that early dramatic weight loss on keto is water weight, from your body burning through its stored carbohydrate reserves, called glycogen, which hold a significant amount of water alongside them. The real fat loss underneath that number is real and meaningful, but it's considerably slower and less dramatic than that first exciting scale reading suggests. The Mediterranean diet doesn't promise the fastest results on this entire list, but it is consistently ranked the most sustainable and healthiest overall approach by expert nutrition panels, specifically because it isn't built around restriction at all. It's built around food quality, vegetables, olive oil, fish, legumes, whole grains, which makes it something people can realistically maintain for years, not just a few intense weeks before burning out. And that detail might genuinely be the single most important finding across all of weight loss research. The specific diet matters far less than almost everyone assumes. What actually matters most is which diet a specific person can realistically sustain for months or years at a time, because almost any reasonable, moderate calorie deficit produces weight loss in the short term. The diets that produce lasting, long-term results are simply the ones people don't eventually quit. Now let's talk about protein specifically, because the research here has become remarkably clear and remarkably underrated. A 2025 systematic review and meta-analysis found that higher protein intake significantly prevents muscle mass decline in adults with overweight or obesity who are actively losing weight. And the research goes further. Protein intake exceeding roughly 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight per day is associated with actual increases in muscle mass during weight loss, not just slower muscle loss. That distinction matters enormously because muscle tissue is metabolically expensive to maintain, meaning more muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate, which works directly against the very metabolic slowdown we talked about earlier. There's even research suggesting timing matters. A controlled study found that protein consumed before sleep is properly digested and absorbed throughout the night, measurably increasing muscle protein synthesis while you are literally unconscious. Your body can build and preserve muscle tissue while you sleep, provided it has the raw protein material available to do it with. This is precisely why so many people who diet purely through calorie restriction, without adequate protein, end up losing a frustrating combination of fat and muscle together, and end up with a slower metabolism at the end of their diet than someone who lost the same amount of weight while prioritizing protein intake throughout. Now let's bust a few specific myths that absolutely refuse to die, despite mountains of contradicting evidence. Myth 1. Eating fat makes you fat, and saturated fat causes heart disease. A major meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found no significant link between saturated fat intake and heart disease, directly contradicting decades of low-fat dietary advice that shaped how multiple generations were taught to eat. The low-fat era of the 1990s and 2000s was built on considerably weaker scientific ground than most people today realize. Myth 2. You can permanently, irreversibly damage your metabolism through dieting. This particular idea exploded into public consciousness after a famous study followed contestants from a televised weight loss competition, finding their metabolisms had slowed dramatically 6 years later, with most participants regaining the weight. But here's the crucial nuance that almost always gets left out of that story. That metabolic slowdown is largely the expected biological response to weight loss itself, driven by exactly the leptin and ghrelin mechanisms we just covered, not some permanent, irreversible damage inflicted by the diet specifically. Your metabolism adapts downward during weight loss, and research suggests it absolutely can adapt back upward again, but typically only if you rebuild lost muscle mass and stop chronically, severely restricting calories for years on end. 2. Myth 3, and this one is genuinely everywhere. Your metabolism is the real reason you can't lose weight once you hit your 30s or 40s. For most healthy adults, metabolic rate declines very gradually with age, and medical conditions capable of meaningfully slowing metabolism, like a significantly underactive thyroid, are actually uncommon in the general population. The far bigger, far more common culprits as people age are quietly losing muscle mass year after year, becoming gradually less active in daily life without noticing it, and slowly eating somewhat more than they did a decade earlier. Small, invisible drift, not a sudden metabolic collapse on your 30th birthday. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, modern weight loss medications, because the research here has moved at an almost unprecedented speed over the past few years. Drugs like semaglutide and tirzepatide, known by brand names like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro, work by mimicking gut hormones, including the same GLP, one we mentioned earlier, that regulate appetite and blood sugar, dramatically reducing hunger and overall food intake. A major real-world study directly comparing the two medications, using actual electronic health records rather than a controlled lab setting, found that tirzepatide consistently produced greater weight reduction than semaglutide over a 6-month treatment period in everyday clinical practice. This represents, genuinely, one of the most significant shifts in obesity treatment in decades. For some people, especially those living with severe obesity, these medications are producing results that diet and exercise alone have historically struggled to achieve. But, and this is critical, they are absolutely not a free, permanent pass. Most people who stop taking these medications gradually regain a significant portion of the weight they lost, because the medication was actively managing those same hunger hormones we discussed, not permanently rewiring the underlying biology. Stop the medication, and ghrelin and the other appetite signals tend to drift back toward where they started. This actually reframes how many obesity researchers now think about treatment entirely, less like a temporary diet with an end date, and more like managing a chronic condition that may require some form of ongoing, long-term support, whether that's medication, structured behavioral support, or some combination of both. So here is the honest, complete summary of where the actual science currently stands. Calories in versus calories out is real. It's a genuine law of physics, but it's influenced by dozens of factors largely outside your direct conscious control. Your hormones, your NEAT, your sleep quality, your stress levels, your muscle mass, and your body's deeply ingrained biological resistance to weight loss itself, a resistance built by millions of years of evolution preparing your body for famines that, for most of us, will thankfully never actually arrive. No single diet has been definitively proven superior to all others for long-term results. The best diet, according to the actual evidence, is whichever one a specific person can genuinely sustain, because consistency over months and years beats clever tricks almost every single time. Protein and muscle preservation matter enormously, and are dramatically underrated by most mainstream diet advice, which still focuses almost entirely on calories while ignoring body composition. And powerful new medications are genuinely changing what's medically possible for people with obesity. but they work by cooperating with your underlying biology, not by replacing the need to understand it. There is no secret. There is no single trick. There's just a complicated, fascinating, deeply human biological and hormonal system. And the people getting the best long-term results are usually the ones who stopped hunting for a shortcut and started working with how their body actually scientifically functions. That's what the research actually says. Not what the ads say. Not what your aunt says. Not what the guy with the lemon water says. What the actual studies, the actual hormones, and the actual data say.